Okay, so let me ask you a question. How do you know that? How do you spot a vampire?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. So I think it's practice, but let me ask you a question. Can you bring to mind someone in your life presently or past, doesn't matter, where whenever you're around them, you go away feeling drained
A
and where you
hundred
kind of
thumbs up.
cringe like this when you have to see them, or like they could have been a friend for a long time and so you feel obliged to go, or for whatever yeah, okay. So you can, if you can grab that idea, and if anybody who's watching this can grab that idea, that's someone who is being an energy vampire towards you. Or I mean, and it's not personal. If they're being an energy vampire to you, they're likely being an energy vampire to everybody. It tends not to be personal, but that's sort of the essence of it. And so the reason you feel drained is because, and this is, so energy vampire has a lot of definitions on the internet and stuff, which I think are airy fairy and not what I mean. So, they're sealing your psychic energy, which I don't know what that means, or something like that. What I'm talking about is an imagery. So literally, when you go and hang out with a person that does all the talking and doesn't let you say anything and just monologues, or somebody who is angry beyond, rages at you, drills down on you, or insists their opinion is the most important, or is always a victim, is always saying, "Oh, I'm so sad, and it's because this happened to me, and everything's bad for any." So any of those things, if you can begin to picture that this person's intention in this interaction is to suck up all the energy in the room, to take all of it, right? To or to take from you to give to them. So the victim may not take all the energy, but they're trying to say to you, pay attention to me, feel sorry for me, give me extra because I'm so weak. Anytime someone is, the purpose of a transaction is someone is trying to take your energy, make you give them something, they are being an energy vampire.
Do they know that?
No, no. I mean, it gets complicated because no, but yes. Like, and we'll talk about how I can tell in myself, but it's a different energy. It doesn't feel good. Like the person that's being a victim isn't feeling great and just going, "Ha ha, I'm taking all of your energy for myself. Away I go." No, they're going, "Oh, I hurt and I need something to soothe, and I'm going to make you be the thing that soothes me,
Yeah, whether you like it or not. Yeah.
whether you like it or not." And am I aware that I'm doing that? Probably not, but at some level, yes, because I can feel what's in my body, even if I'm not acknowledging what's in my body. So kind
Right.
of yes, kind of no, right? So yeah, so that's it. That's and so what some of the rules, like if you, so energy vampire is competitive, right? I want to take from you. I win because you lose, and it's competitive. I win because you lose. So anytime you're feeling that you're in a spot with someone where they're wrestling for control of the conversation or the opinion or whatever, that's someone's being an energy vampire because they're
hmm
trying to win, but at your expense, at my expense.
Is it always in your experience? Is it always as like it sounds very confrontational?
Yeah, and it really is not. That's just, those are the ones that are easy to, low hanging
Right.
fruit.
Right.
Here's an example that is the opposite. Where would you like to go for dinner? I don't know. Whatever. Whatever you pick. That's being an energy vampire. Why? Because I'm saying, I'm not spending any of my life energy. I'm not going to take a risk and say, I'd like Thai food. And you say, no, I don't like Thai food. I'm just going to leave it up to you. And you get to take all the risk and make all the decisions.
Right. Assuming it's perpetual, right? Like I mean, if
Oh, 100%.
right.
These are, yes, 100%. It's not, I mean, saying, no, I don't mind. Do you have, I mean, it's a negotiation, right?
Right. Right.
So if the purpose of this is perfect. If the purpose of the negotiation is to compare notes and come to an agreement, in other words, if the purpose of the negotiation is to collaborate, you're in good. And you'll end up feeling more energetic for having shared that than you would at the beginning, right? You're going to feel better about where you're going for dinner because you feel like you, not only are you going for dinner someplace that you agree on, but you've connected as humans to figure that out. you said you shared a bit about what kind of food you like and how you feel, and the other person said the same thing, and then you kind of put it together. Or the other person said, I honestly, one of my favorite things is for someone else to pick and for me to try something I haven't tried before.
Yeah.
That's also energy boosting because it's like, oh, I can do that. You've asked something of me overtly that I can deliver, and now I feel like I've given you a gift, and that's fun, right? So all that's good. It's when it's I mean the next step of it would be I don't care where we go. Okay, well then let's go Thai food. Oh, I really don't like Thai food. Okay, how about
Yeah.
pizza? Well, I had pizza for lunch.
I
Well, then say where you want to go. Like,
yeah.
it's not about the what they're doing, it's about the intention behind it and the energy behind it, right? So
Yeah.
if they're not reaching out to collaborate, they're being an energy vampire. They're sucking the energy and it's competitive and it's not going to work.
I'm thinking about I was with somebody like last summer and this person very easygoing and I anything I suggested they were like, "Oh no, yeah, whatever you want. I'm down with whatever. All good." And they genuinely are easygoing, but in my head I'm thinking like, "You're only in town for a little bit. I want to take
Yeah.
you where you want to go.
Yeah, I want you to have a good time.
Yeah, I want you to have a good time. I've been to all these places. I mean, I could throw out a bunch of things, but like I really do want to know what this person wants, but I didn't push or anything. I was like, okay, sure, let's just kind of play it by ear. And that person later in the day was like, "Hey, do you mind?" And they felt as if they were really tiptoeing and trying
Right.
not to make huge demands and be very accommodating, but they said like, "Hey, do you mind if we go grab a burrito?" And I was like, yes, let's go.
Yes, let's
Hell yeah.
do
And
it.
I remember feeling very relieved in the moment. And then recognize in hindsight, like, oh yeah, I feel relieved here because I guess I felt unsure of what you wanted, right? And I think that sticks out to me as exactly what you're talking about, but also a good example reminder for me that it's not always like intentionally manipulative or confrontational at
Yeah,
all. It's like it can just because the person has good intentions right, it's
that's right. It's
still
not about, yeah.
it doesn't it can still be draining,
Yes. Yes.
which was a big unlock for me and like something that yeah, it's kind of it's not always a confrontational bad intentioned thing.
No, it's
Yeah.
really not. It's really not. And it's very helpful. Again, it's particularly helpful when looking internal because we all have energy vampires, right? And this isn't a they versus us thing. But knowing that, like I was raised to be accommodating, to oh no, whatever you like. And are you sure? Like one of the things that I do that is very energy vampire-ish, and I found I was doing it, I stayed with my son for a few days. And I would say, is it okay if I would ask for something? Is it okay if I use the office downstairs for an hour? And they would say, sure, we'll just get our stuff out of there. And then I would say, are you sure it's okay? Yes, it's fine. But okay, but because I can move if it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay, now I have gone from asking something, taking a respectful answer, trusting that they're telling the truth, right? That's what they mean. And then saying, take care of me because I feel insecure for having asked for something and I shouldn't take up any space. So I really shouldn't have asked. So please tell me I'm okay 10 times.
Yeah.
Energy vampire,
Totally.
right?
And
And without knowing that, I would think, no, I'm just being nice. I just want to make sure. No,
yeah.
you don't. You want me to tell you that you're okay for having taken up space.
Yeah. It is really counterintuitive because you'd think people pleasing that's the version of people pleasing is, hey, are you sure? Are you sure? Okay, like I can move if you want, and triple checking, quadruple checking. That's what most people pleasers do by default, but it's
Hmm. Hmm.
counterintuitive because the best way to people please is to do the opposite and say, ask once and then don't ask again because
Hmm.
you've already had the exchange, you already asked, and nobody has to take care of anybody, right?
That's
So
right.
like it is actually
Please don't.
it is the opposite of people pleasing and being
Hmm.
accommodating by asking too many times.
And it is also so your friend saying, I don't mind what we do. he thinks he's being accommodating, what he's doing is he's cutting off your opportunity for part of the joy of having someone visit. So part of the joy of having someone visit is to show them your town in a way that pleases them, where you feel proud of your town and proud of what you've got, and it makes them happy and they actually have a great experience, which feels really good to have given someone or to be
Yeah.
part of with someone. And so by saying, I don't mind what we do, it's just, okay, all right, well, then we'll just sit in my living room for 4 days and eat macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because why did you come here? Like,
Yeah.
what I want is for us to have fun in a way that is fun for you. And if you're not willing, and I'm not dissing your friend at all, but if your whole thing is just to be accommodating, A, you're not going to get the joy out of life that you could, but B, you're cutting off my joy too,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep. I've had other guests visit, and on their last day, we did something. We were kind of driving around town, and they made a comment about, "Oh, it was really cool to see that so and so tech company. I wish we did more of that. You know, I would have loved to see all the things." And I was like, "Why didn't we could
yeah,
have done that? The agenda was
yeah,
completely open. We didn't have to do the stuff we did. We I would have been fine to just drive around to see tech companies." And their response was like, "Oh, well, that sounds lame. I didn't want to just make you drive around." It's like, well, that's what I'm here for. I'm literally took
right,
off the
yeah,
days to entertain you here, and
yeah,
my joy comes from entertaining you. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think part of it
that's
is getting
cool.
to know people and knowing what the joy is. Like, I think that's a lot of relationship too, right? Is understanding what is it that is pleasing to the other person about what they're doing and what they would like to do with you and for you,
Yeah,
and allowing them the space to have that pleasure, right? I was in a, and this is flipping to the positive, which is great, but that's what happens, right? When you know energy vampires well enough, it's really super easy to get flipped into, oh, okay, all the positive things about knowing this stuff and using it. But I was in a training course one time, and the instructor was saying, well, so earlier in the training course, I was in the back assisting. I was like, yeah, assisting with helping the students. And there was another person beside me that was assisting. And at one point she said, "You say just such insightful things. You're so," and I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't know what I'm doing." And then half an hour later, the instructor says, "When someone pays you a compliment and you negate it, you've taken away their pleasure in giving you the compliment." And I kind of
right.
went, oh crap, I just did that. So I went back to her and I said, is that what I did? Like, did I take away your pleasure of giving me a compliment by saying that? She says, I went away from that thinking, oh, who am I? She's so much superior to me. I don't even know. I shouldn't even have said that because who am I? I'm just a lowly at it. Well, I wouldn't know if she did good or bad
Yeah,
or like she turned it inward and it was eating at her. And I'm like, oh my God. I
yeah,
was just doing a habit thing where, you know, nothing I do is good.
yeah.
And it
I
was poison.
Yeah, I remember that YouTube channel I mentioned last time, Charisma on Command, where they like dissect public interviews of public figures and talk about it from like a emotional like
Oh yeah.
intelligence perspective. So there
Yeah.
was one on Keanu Reeves where it had all these clips of in interviews of him being complimented and just squirming and just could not
Oh,
accept it. And he kept doing that, kept deflecting and saying, "Oh no, it was the team, it was the other my
yeah.
co-star or
Yeah.
whatever."
Yeah.
And one host finally said like, "Oh, you can't accept a compliment. You're not
Oh,
good at accepting
oh, I see
compliments."
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he kind of snapped out of it, but it was really interesting. Somebody on that level, like an A-list celebrity, still is just kind of deflecting.
Yeah. Still
Um,
human. Go
yeah,
figure.
yeah,
So, yeah. So that, okay. So that is him being an energy vampire because he's
accidentally.
not accidentally. Yeah,
Yep,
exactly. So the what we're after, what the opposite of energy vampire is collaboration, right? So I don't have to be a perfect human. I'm trying to say something to you, and you're reaching to try and understand what I'm saying. And we're trying to collaborate and we're trying to connect more. That's where we want to be, and that's the opposite of energy vampire. So
right.
so in contrast, and you energy vampire is anytime my I am rebuffed or competed against, like anytime that there is a stop and a pushback or even just a stop is that's what we don't want. That's the energy vampire. The reason that I would like to sort of go back to the more aggressive forms is because I think those are the most dangerous.
Yeah,
Like you develop the subtleties after you come to under like you can practice the whole concept of are you in competition or collaboration? Why do I feel drained by that? What's going on with that? All of that. But I think there are many people who are at risk currently because they are surrounded by people that are draining them, and they don't know how to get out of it, and they don't know that it's a thing to get out of, and they just think that's what life is, and they think like battered women, battered over and over and over again, end up believing that it's their fault and that they're losers, and if they were just better people, that there's a way out of it, that there's something that they could be doing. I mean, we've talked a lot of times about, right, hop on one foot with your arm behind your back and do a dance like this, and then maybe then you'll get heard or something will change.
And in, I mean, even lighter context, like at work or something, right? You have a bad boss, and the bad boss is making you, they're just a bad boss, and
Yes.
people reporting into them think that, oh man, it's me. I need to do something
Yeah,
better. It's my job.
yeah, I've done something wrong. That's right. I have to
Yeah.
please this guy, or I have to play the game is another one. Just he does that, I do this. I've recently been through something at work. It like it never goes away. It's interesting that the practice continues. But okay, because the other piece of this is if I am confronted by an energy vampire, automatically the first thing that comes up in all of us is our vampire,
Hmm.
right? We're at war, we defend ourselves. So not only do I have to understand that this is a person being a vampire sucking my energy as opposed to collaborating with me, but I also have to then take care of my own vampire because I've now attacked or I've defended or I've cowered or I've done something that leaves me in a state, an energy state that is out of whack and that is requiring something from the outside world to stabilize. So yeah, so the boss thing is another example of that where as the value of the tool is to go, okay, I see that this is a different thing from collaboration. I see this is not just two people getting to know each other or working together or whatever.
Yeah.
This is different and it has different rules because it has different outcomes, right? You alluded to it, and you can't have an outcome. You can't influence an outcome in a when
Right.
you're with an energy vampire
Yeah.
because they're not looking at you. They are not connecting with you whatsoever. They are feeding on the energy in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I was having this conversation on the weekend where I was talking about with a friend, like there's the when you're meeting somebody new for the first time, there's like there's like the unspoken social contract
Yeah.
in that. This is how I approach it anyway, is like maybe, especially if I don't know somebody, it's like a little bit more like enthusiastic, for example, right? If again, if especially like context matters, right? If you're going to be spending
Yeah.
all evening with them, or it's a new coworker or something like that, you're generally a little more high spirits, like you're
Animated.
animated, a little friendlier, just to like
Yeah.
go the extra mile a little bit to make it abundantly clear, because you don't know my tendencies, you don't
Right.
know me, you're probably feeling a little unsure, whatever. So it's like the unspoken agreement in the social contract to like go above and beyond a little bit to like make sure, or to do your best to I guess connect with them.
Yeah. Or offer at least offer connection.
Yeah,
Right.
and sorry, quickly, the way I was framing it with him in this conversation was that basically to go above and beyond, so the other person, nothing is left up for interpretation, right? Like I
Right.
typically
Right.
wouldn't make like a sly sarcastic remark with somebody I just met, because they could very easily misinterpret that because they don't understand who I am as a
Right.
person yet.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a risky move, but I like your framing of like it's an attempt to connect with them, right?
Yeah.
And I you can very much feel if you go to meet somebody, especially for the first time, and they're like, stop, or they're just kind of not there,
Hmm.
right? And so that's a sign for me, which is really helpful. Like when I meet somebody for the first time and the interaction goes and I feel strange after, it's like, oh, I think it's because I threw out my line to connect, I threw up my line in the water and there was no water. It
Yeah,
was cement,
that's right.
right?
And for whatever reason, it's cement, right?
Right.
So because it's all negotiation. So I mean, as someone who has been uncomfortable with new interactions for most of my life, I think I'm better now because of this stuff. But that cement, certainly it's shut, but you don't know why, right? So, okay, that didn't go well. That doesn't necessarily mean it won't go well next time or 6 months from now when you've been working side by side and they know who you are and suddenly they go, "Hey, I like you," right? There, everybody reacts differently. It's a negotiation and it takes time. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. That's why meet and greets are so draining because everybody's in there with different intentions and different levels of discomfort and different protections for that discomfort.
Yeah.
And and so you end up like one of the things that, well, two things, two pitfalls for me that may be different from you, I don't know. One is getting trapped with a person that goes, "A human that will talk to me," right? They're
Oh
scared to
yeah,
be there, so they
in the
just,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, in a
yeah.
cocktail party setting, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but I'm not that strong a swimmer. You're going to
Yeah.
drown me. Like,
Yeah.
you have to let me go so I can do what I can do to feel
Yeah.
comfortable here.
Yeah.
And the other one, then this one is I see a lot is the trauma bonding. So the way to connect is to find something you both, this is pure poison. The way to connect is to find something you both agree to hate, or you both agree, yeah, you've had a bad experience with. And
Yeah.
so you end up bonding over the thing you don't like, which is basically you've bonded as vampires to
Yeah.
feed on the same stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, but
That's
then how do you get out of that?
that's totally a thing, that the cocktail party personas. And so cocktail parties are like, as I've gotten older and more attuned to this stuff, I'm a lot more open to cocktail parties. I wouldn't say I'm like, I love them. They're my favorite thing to do ever, but I generally find them fascinating because, you get so much exposure to different types of personas very, very
Yeah.
quickly. And
Yeah.
you can see the masks and the sensitivities in real
Yeah.
time, and you get so
Yeah.
much variety.
Yeah.
And on my best of days, I leave those things, and not every interaction by a long shot goes super smooth, and there's like awkward interactions and there's fun ones and there's like kind of strange ones, whatever. But in like my best of days, my default thought is like, oh, you know humans are very complicated, and like
Yeah.
that's about right, right? Like I went and
Yeah.
met 15 new people in the
Yeah.
last few
Yeah.
hours, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
of course, percentage wise, like that makes sense. Like a few were awkward, few were this, few were that. Like you're gonna get a variety on that stuff. And my worst of days, I'm like, it was my fault. I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
an
why did
awkward
I say
person.
that?
I'm an awkward person. That's why the interaction was awkward. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 That's where your vampires are attacking internally. You're just,
yeah,
yeah, bringing yourself down.
yeah. And do you want to go down the rabbit hole of how do you spot a vampire in yourself, or is that
No, I
another?
think we do. I think we do that as a separate thing.
Okay.
I think if, I mean, I'm sort of thinking in terms of if someone is listening to this or watching this, I don't know what they do anyway, and this is new concept. I think breaking it into pieces is easier to sort through, and I think that spotting this in other people is the way to start.
Yeah.
I just think that so to me, how you initially spot a vampire is if you feel drained after the interactions, if you dread interactions with this person, if you feel stupid, if you, yeah, if you don't feel buoyed by an interaction with somebody, in that interaction, they've been a vampire. You've probably been a vampire too, because that's what happens, especially when you're unaware. But that's a vampire interaction.
Yeah.
And it's literally, not literally, the image I hold is the I'm going to suck your blood. I'm going to take your energy, all of it for myself, and leave you
Right.
with nothing. You will go home drained.
Right. What is it for you? I'm curious, what does it feel like after? Like, what is the actual sensation that you feel
Depends on if I get
after?
triggered or not.
Right.
Right. So some of my favorite moments are when I go, "Ooh, look at that little vampire."
Right.
Do, do, do.
Right.
That's a smidgen of a vampire. It's my crush you like a bug vampire that says I can see something that you didn't mean for me to see.
Right.
So for the most part, if it's not, if there, if if I don't have a matching vampire, if like I mean, it gets complicated because what you do with your own vampires is you discover them, they where they came from, which we can go into at a later date, and then how do you heal them? How do you resolve the things that cause them to flare up to protect you? So there's all of that. But so 90% or 98% of the time, I don't feel anything except a little tiny bit of amusement. It's like a a tasty little dish because I've seen somebody do a vampire thing and it's just I've watched again and it feels a bit like watching a TV show like Real Housewives or something. But every once in a while, someone will trigger a vampire in me, like they'll trigger a reaction in me because there's a part of me that's not healed and it hits a wound that I have. So my vampire comes up in as a result.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole different thing. Then it could take me weeks to resolve it.
And so, I mean, what is the sensation when you're triggered? Is it like a, do you feel tired? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you
I feel
feel,
tired, but generally speaking, okay, so sorry, I'll say it in two ways again. Even if I do know that someone's a vampire, if I'm not triggered, I will feel tired after because
I see.
well, often because unless I'm completely like if I'm completely grounded and you know that thing you used to do with maybe you did it with your sister, you put your hand on someone's forehead and go, you can't touch me, and they can
Hmm.
swing, but they can't reach you because your arm is longer. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's like that, right? So they're at arm's length and they have no effect on me. And honestly, I'm not drained. Sometimes it's just wow, that's a really powerful vampire and I haven't got myself set up right. And then there's sort of like an energy shield that has to come up. So even if you're not feeding them, you're there's energy being used to keep them out. And
Yes.
that's very draining, right? You can
To
only do
hold
that for
your
so long.
space. Yeah.
That's stuff like if you have a boss that's an energy vampire, that will often be the case, I think, for like is for me, because I can't just dismiss them. I can't just do what I would normally do with a vampire. There, I have to, or a family member like that, people where that you can't, you're not going to cut them out of your life, but there are times when you just have to put up a shield and just go, I can't, I'm not
Yeah.
letting this in.
That
And
one.
it's tiring.
Yeah. That one strikes the most PT, like I have so many examples of that, and the boss one is so tough because you have to interact with them. You also have to listen to bits of what they're saying because they're directing you and you
That's
need
right.
instruction.
You can't
A-
dismiss everything. Yeah.
And you have to stay engaged, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to stay engaged and listen. It's not like a cocktail party where someone goes off the wall and then you can kind of
And you
check out and
go,
be like, I'm
yeah.
going to get some cracker, you know? You
Yeah.
have to like sit there and listen and report back to them. And so I just feel like that one's particularly slippery because if you're engaged and open and listening, there's way more opportunity for them to slip in little
Yes.
things.
100%.
Um,
100%.
and you can't hold their forehead while they swing at you. You have to like
That's right.
whatever.
Because then you get yourself fired. And so
Yeah.
that's it. I mean, we will talk about this down the road too, but there are special exemptions, there are special cases, and a boss is one of them where just by the nature of their power over you,
Yeah.
they are an energy vampire, even if they're a good boss, they hold power over you, which means they can take your energy whenever they want because they have a special power to do so. So that one's tricky. But and so the long-term strategy for a boss that's a vampire is if you can't find a way to eventually to disengage and have that not drain your energy on a daily basis, you need to look at should you go,
Yeah.
right? Because over time, and it takes some time for sure, and it should, but over time, you've got to figure out, is this sustainable? Is there a way of building a bubble around this so it does not steal my life force? And if you can, and if the job still holds enough other stuff, then you stay. But if you can't, then that's another one of those things where you sometimes you just have to go. So and it's we're sort of programmed to you have to find a way to work with the boss. Sometimes you just can't because the cost to you as a human, the cost emotionally and for your other relationships and your joy of life and everything is so high.
Yes.
You just have to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, do you think in like power dynamics like that, where one person just by definition has more power because of in this case, the hierarchy of the organization,
Right.
do you think there's ever, do you think it's possible to have like a completely fully grounded, non-draining on the less powerful person's part interaction? Or do you think there will
Oh yeah.
always be a little bit of a drain because the person with less power, even if the more powerful person is grounded and being, as high integrity as can be, the person with less power is still feeling like they need to present in a way that maybe is a little bit of a stretch for them and therefore draining? Like, is that, you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So I do see what you're saying. And I think the answer is in, so first of all, you have to have a boss that is aware of how they manage their energy so that they make it available when appropriate for collaboration. That's real collaboration. That isn't, yeah, you tell me what you think and then I'll make the decision and I'm just going to pretend I'm listening to you. None of
Yeah.
that. But there's lots of cases where the best case scenario for a business is true collaboration where everybody comes to the table equal. The boss ends up making the decision and everybody knows that coming in. But the honest to goodness best case scenario for you is to say all your stuff. But so when you describe, so if that's there, if there's space for that, if you have a boss that genuinely understands and is building a space for collaboration, and then there is still that, which I think is probably 90% or 99% of the time, there is still this, but that's my boss and I still want to please him and I want to. Okay,
Right.
that's internal growth available to the human bringing that into the room.
Hmm.
The the boss can do his or her part of the collaboration, his or open it up or reach forward, invite, listen and try and find the meaning in what's being said, model what open communication looks like and what, collaboration looks like. But the part of people that is going, that's my boss and I want, okay, that is a vampire. That is a protective instinct. And it's the responsibility of the person coming into the room with that to heal it, to grow it up.
Right. So in other words, despite there's only so much the more powerful person can do in those situations, right? It still is very much a collaboration despite the power dynamic being massively lopsided in some cases,
Yeah.
right?
So
It's it,
what I would
it's
say
it's
to,
not their job to take care of you just because they have
that's
more
right.
power,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And remember, the power is only in that one position. It's not life power. It's
Right.
just at this, like they took that job and
Right.
it comes with its own responsibilities. So for me, the a good boss knows when the power dynamic is in play, knows when there's a decision to be made that's going to be their decision. When there's power at play, right? When the boss has to change something and they know that there's no room for collaboration, there's nothing that can be done to change it, it just has to be so. Then they go in, they go clean, succinct. This is what's happening. Treat people with respect, treat them like adults, tell the thing, let them have their feelings about it, let them deal with it.
Yeah.
But keep it as sharp as clean a cut as possible.
Yeah.
And for the business as a whole, generally speaking, in my mind, you build a collaborative bubble where everybody knows what those parameters are,
Yeah.
right? Where I know that I'm going to get rewarded. I'm going to feel more part of the group. I'm going to be brought in by saying clever things, not clever things, by saying things that I'm thinking, by giving ideas and doing work and stuff towards a common goal. I also know that I'm not going to get rewarded for saying, listen, I think it's stupid that we have to work this Saturday.
Right. I can conversely, like I always remember you pointed out many times over the last many years, but I always think about like there's something important and like admirable and as an employee, it to have your boss that has a ton of power basically in certain instances say like this is not collaborative. This is what I need from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And like I need it by this and I don't want your input like in so many words,
Yeah.
but laying the groundwork and being clear about what this scenario is, even if it's something that at face value would be something you wouldn't want to hear. Like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't you don't want my opinion in this scenario. It's better to hear that up front versus like pretending that you want my opinion and then I say it and you're
Yeah.
not really listening. It's a checkbox item. So that's like that's an interesting something I often think about is that it a good boss doesn't always need to be like pandering or trying
No,
to
a good
make you
boss
feel
doesn't
comfortable.
pander
Right.
because so the if you think about what happens, so that your boss is very clean and says, listen, this isn't a collaboration, this is a communication. I'm telling you what's going to happen here, and I'm not looking for input. It is, even at that, you're going to have a reaction. You're going to feel the imposition of him going, this is my power. I'm taking the energy, I'm taking the power, right? So
Hmm.
it is a vampire situation on its face. Anytime there's a competition, anytime someone has power differential and takes the energy from you, that's an energy vampire.
Hmm.
So you will have a reaction. What your reaction is, it depends on your history and who you are and how much work you've done and all that kind of stuff. So yes, absolutely as clean as possible. But the key to the whole thing is that your boss needs to recognize that that is what's going on and treat it as respectfully as he or she can, because I just hate when, so, oh, let's have a round table, let's take a survey on whether we should work on Saturdays or not, and then
Yeah.
at the end, well, we've decided we're working on Saturdays. Meanwhile, the entire group has said all the reasons why they don't want to, or it's not
Right.
a good idea.
Right.
And so why were you asking? All you've done is say, yeah, we're going to pretend that we give a shit about you, and then we're going to show you that we don't. We're
Yeah.
going to pretend that your opinion matters or has value, and then we're going to prove to you that it doesn't.
Yeah. You've done more net damage in that scenario
Oh,
by a long
yeah.
shot than
And
taking
then, and
the
then,
hit up front of doing a little bit of damage. Yeah.
especially if the next day you do want the collaboration of what do you think we should do with blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You have no trust. You've eroded your trust. I'm not telling you look what you did with my Saturday thing. You just trashed it. You didn't even want to know in the first place. I'm sure not going to tell you about something else.
Yeah, it's an interesting distinction. I don't think I'm this is what you're getting at, but like it's a difference between trust and admiration, basically. Like trust and like, right? And sometimes, and I can speak from experience on this, like those lines were very muddy for me. It's like I would value my direct employees liking me. Like that to
Mm-hmm.
me was the number one metric a lot of the times, just by default. And it's almost as if you are really, if trust is the number one thing and you're always looking out for trust and being liked is second,
Yeah.
that's kind of the different that's the difference between, being upfront
Plus,
that this isn't collaborative and
I don't know how you would ever know you were liked. Are they going to tell you they don't like you? Are you going to get an honest read from an employee
right,
ever if you're their boss?
right. No, but you can try to
I mean,
pretend
okay,
that you are. Yeah.
I want to say you can and you do. Sort of, it is another thing that happens where there is that collaboration and you can feel that energy connection, right? So there will be people that you've worked with where you go, no, I know that guy liked me. I really, we will stay friends,
Yes.
right? There,
Yes.
there absolutely is oh, I see you, you see me. Okay. And as long as within that context, there is still respect for, oh, but you're the boss. So I will not go, I'm not going to ask these things of you because that's beyond the boundaries of what you can
Yeah.
support me in. So there is that, but that's not everybody. That's some people. That's, I guess, your tribe, right? That's the people that you actually click with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that's not necessary to be.
Yeah. It
Trust is, in my well, if you wanted to run well. I mean, lots of people run businesses where it's antitrust, where the
right.
whole thing is
Fear-based.
built to make sure there was no need for trust because everything is controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like, yeah, you can't have both of those things. You can't you're at sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice being liked for maintaining trust, and sometimes you will erode your trust in favor of trying to be more liked. Yeah, it's an
But yeah, for
interesting.
me, trust
Yeah, and I
is the
think
whole thing. I don't think it's the place to try and be liked. You will
t
be liked or you will be respected or you will be trusted, but you gotta earn that with something besides, because to me, being liked in that situation is feels a bit egoish. Like,
to totally. And I think anyone for the most part, if you were given those two options and set out with that mindset ahead of time and were like, okay, I understand the distinction between two. I understand where instances like I understand how these things play together and play
right,
against each other. So if you're going in with eyes wide open, I think most people would choose trust. And in hindsight, how I see it, when I've been a boss in the past, I didn't think of it like that. I wasn't thinking
right.
clearly,
Right.
and so I didn't go in eyes wide open, and then I would just default in the moment to being liked. You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
it's
Yes, yes, because that's a natural, that's your upbringing, that's your training, right? That's cultural
yeah,
and human probably too.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
your fault for
so
not telling me ahead of time.
I'm
That's what
sorry.
I'm gonna go
Yeah,
with. Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
I know it's my fault.
yeah,
Usually is.
yes.
That's full circle, right? That's the reason for talking about energy vampires, the reason for understanding this dynamic or using this overlay as a navigation tool is because it allows us to wake up to a way things work that we would otherwise just be doing kind of in our sleep. And it allows us to go, oh, that's cultural. Oh, that's a better choice. Oh, I see what I'm doing there. It gives us a tool to do better and to explain what is. And to me, the that's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like it acknowledges it too, right? Because a lot of times, and I'm speaking from experience, like when I was younger, I know that I knew intuitively that I would feel unsettled after an interaction or series of interactions or
Right.
specifically around this person, but I would just kind of brush it off. It's like, oh, energy, like the idea of energy and somebody draining it was at that point especially felt like, oh, that's not a thing. Like that's not a thing. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm just whatever. I just feel this way because I do. There's no reason, or maybe I'm not even acknowledging that I feel that way. But when you acknowledge it, you put a label on it. It's actually that in and of itself is very helpful because it's it allows you to, or it prevents you, I guess, from sweeping that thing under the rug, and then that
Yeah.
not being addressed, yeah,
And it
forces you to
gives,
shine
yeah,
light on it.
yes, yes. And resolve it, which is the whole key. Right? So resolve might look like there's nothing I can do, but I accept that. And so I can detach from it. Or it might look like, oh, wait a minute, I can see where I played a part in that. And I'm going to do things different. I'm going to approach things differently in the future or whatever. Or go back to that person and say, listen, it has come to my attention that I was a dick. And
Yeah.
I would like to apologize for that.
Right, right.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, it allows, and so, I mean, I'm a fan of people going to therapy just because I'm a fan of people finding out more about their insides, right? I want to talk about what's inside and bring that out into conversation. I think for a lot of people, it feels it's unknown and it feels scary, like something bad's going to happen or I'm going to have to confess, what a loser I am, or I'm going to have to say emotions that hurt or whatever. And the thing that I like about this is it's a release of all of that. It's a way of reframing things that's gentle, that's respectful, that allows for all our feelings and everybody else's feelings, but in a way that is functional and allows us to have better days,
Hmm.
better moments and better days.
Right.
And it's not scary.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of scary.
Yeah. It feels, yeah, more manageable when it's a thing, when it's like a
Well,
tangible
when
thing.
you know what the rules are, right?
Yeah.
When you so you walk away from an interaction with somebody and you kind of go, why do I feel like shit? And then you can't you so you spend, I mean, I have to do this anyway every time this happens, every time I get triggered, but spend a lot of time telling everybody you can find what happened and why it wasn't your fault or it was your fault, or like dissecting and dissecting and dissecting, trying to find ground on this. And the actual answer is you get to say that for as long as your little wounded part needs to. But in the end, the answer is, yeah, they were not interacting with you. They were stealing energy. They were trying to, you know,
Hmm.
feed themselves because of their damage. That makes a huge difference to being able to reconcile what
So
has
so
happened.
so to wrap on that, like,
Yeah,
so what are the key things in your view on how to spot an energy vampire?
right. So key things are if you feel drained in any way, if you feel yourself triggered, so if you feel something rising, like fight, flight, or freeze kind of reactions rising, you're going to be in the presence of a vampire.
Or
If you
fawn?
find yourself not being heard, not being if there's no connection, if people are not trying to collaborate, they're not reaching to see what you're saying. That one's a big one for me. If people are not reaching to hear you and understand you, they are being an energy vampire. They're
Hmm.
in a different world. They're in competition. It's just that kind of thing. And a lot of it is checking in on how you feel inside. So my body doesn't lie, and it takes a minute to get used to it, to get practice, but you're going to feel like shit one way or another, whatever your way of feeling like shit is. If you feel like shit, start looking for energy vampires. Because if you're in a situation that is collaborative, where someone is trying to understand what you're saying, even if they don't understand, you're not going to feel like shit. So it's kind of that simple and that complicated.
And I have one thing to add if you're done,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is for me anyway, I always had to have to remind myself that it doesn't need to be bad intentioned to be an energy vampire,
Oh
to be
no, that's
draining,
right. No, 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 no,
right?
no. Don't it
And so I
justice.
often,
Yeah,
yeah, I'd often rationalize and
good
be
one.
like, oh, well, they had good intentions. They're a nice person. I know them. They're high integrity. Therefore, like, it's on me. But that's
Right.
not always the case. In
No.
fact, that's actually probably the most insidious form of it because it is more covert. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
this is another thing that I would do is like if I'm accusing this person internally of being an energy vampire, like I'm, bad mouthing them or I'm,
Right. No, you're not.
right.
You're saying they're human.
Right, exactly. So that to me was like a big thing, a big shift,
Yes.
is that it
That's
doesn't.
and that's in
Yeah,
some ways that's the hardest one, right?
right.
To go, oh, I can say this about it's another reason why I like to start with that instead of internal, because we're really good, most of us, at picking on ourselves and saying what's wrong with us.
Yeah.
But we are trying not to say what's wrong with other people. Wrong. It's not
Right.
wrong. It's just
Right.
a thing people do for a bunch of reasons.
Right. And it's yeah, it's rooted in reality, right? Like
Yes.
it's not bad or good. It's just kind of the objective, like to your point. Yes, they're human. Being human's not a bad thing. We all do it. So yeah, that's the big one for me is that it can come from good people with good intentions, high integrity, the highest of integrity, and we all do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, helpful.
Yeah, and it's just and the most respectful, best thing you can do for people that you have respect for when they are doing this is to recognize it,
And
because then it limits the damage.
recognize it internally, not say it out loud.
Oh yeah, I just no,
Right.
I just mean realize that that's what,
Right, right.
right? So there was a guy that I used to work with, and I realized we're wrapping, but just a quick
That's
story.
fine.
And he and I would we love to debate and throw ideas at it at quite an aggressive way, but we were collaborating, and we were just like, I think he'd grown up in a similar environment to what mine was. And so we could throw ideas and nobody was getting offended. And we go, ah, it's bullshit. No, try this. What about this? And we would get to
Hmm.
really good places. But every once in a while, he would do something that was not that. It was trying to win. And because we had such a good collaboration, I could look at him and go,
You
what did
did
you
it.
just do there?
Yeah.
And he'd go,
Yeah.
sorry, you're right. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So even really good people, that like a guy that I have a lot of time for. Yeah. Or me. I,
Yeah.
I, I do it sometimes.
Yeah, those are the best. Those are the best conversations where like essentially it's boundless, right? There's no boundaries.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
say anything. There's no judgment. And if somebody veers off course, you're like, you did the
Excuse me.
thing.
You did
Yeah.
the thing. I
Yeah.
did. You did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's super cool. Sweet. Well, that's cool. That's helpful.
Yeah.
A good recap.